Council of August 7th, 2017 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Kitzlar.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Court.
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Alder Spate is excused.
All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is item C, approval of the minutes from July 17th. Is there a motion?
Second.
Second. Any corrections or additions? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is appearances. We have one appearance unless anyone else has an appearance. Steve Rush would like to speak about a problem with Hamburg Construction. If you could come up to the microphone, please. And give us your name and address. And we'll generally allow 3 minutes for this.
I was asked for 5, but I'll do the best I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll see. Okay.
My name is Steve Rush. I live at 465520 Watha Trail. I've been a resident of 26 years and raised my family in the city. The reason I'm calling is Hamburg Construction has made my life miserable for the last 3 months. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures and go through 8 things in the next 5 minutes. I got a little stopwatch up here. I'm going to pass these as you can see. They told me they're going to redo my driveway, and they said, oh, we're putting a brand new base in, and it'll be 8 inches. It'll be quoting me $6 a square foot. When I got the bill or the thing later on, it was $1,300. He came down to $1,100. But what you're seeing right there is that's not a brand new base. That's me coming down with my tractor and the guy going, no, they're just about ready to pour the curb, and I'm kicking the dirt. Well, that's all dirt. You can see the drag marks. Okay, now what you're going to see is after me whining and saying, hey, this is what they did after me whining and bitching. He goes, fine, I'll do it again. And he took the rope down and finally did it right. And that took me 2 days of sitting around to make sure they'd make the rock down enough. Here you'll see is their contract for a new 8-inch base. Not done on the first time, and you can tell it wasn't done on the first time and that they lied because you can see the rope up. They're ready to pour the curb. You're not going to pour a curb and go in there and remove rock afterwards. They didn't have any orange safety cones around any of the equipment. I crashed my truck and did $4,000 worth of damage to my neighbor's car, and about $2,000 to my truck. This is the view of kind of with my security camera. I almost felt targeted. They always put their equipment directly at the end of my driveway. I had to literally go over 2 feet with a Tundra with my front wheels over sand and stuff to get my truck out. At the beginning of the project, I had over 60 people, and especially on the weekend, would turn into my driveway and turn around. They didn't put no signs explaining that the road was closed, no through traffic. So people would come down. My driveway would be here. They'd go. The sign would be 3 feet over. They turn in my driveway and then leave. All the bikers, I mean, just constantly. Another thing, they didn't put any cones around any of the stuff that they're working on, so they dig these holes going to the house. Water pipes would be exposed. There'd be 2-foot holes. This went on for 2 months. Here's a picture of kind of what was going on. They were told to correct this. I came home one day, boom, I saw orange tape around everything. They forgot how to do that a couple days ago because here's August 3rd. 2 houses just down the street where they didn't do it. And this is after they're gone on the day. Mike Hackles, I don't know if I think I've already said this, quoted me $6 a square foot, came out to $13 for a 10 by 10 foot section. When they did poured the cement, they scratched my brand new $300 mailbox and had that gook stuff in the cement all over the bottom of it. Here's I'll do this later. When I first when they first started construction, I asked the guy that had a little Bobcat, I go, do you mind if you can move your stuff over? Just give me 10 feet. Part of my business is I own rental property, and I need to get my trailer out once a week to cut lawns. And the guy says, well, this is my business. What are you going to do in another week when we have all this road down? And I go, well, right now you don't. And then they didn't actually do my road in front of my house for another month, but he went to allow me to have a little space to get my trailer out to cut my lawns. Another thing is when they did this project, they were going from house to house, starting when they did the drains. It's ridiculous to hire a company like this and have them go from one house. Why don't they have a bigger crew? Why do you hire in Hamburg Construction? There's so many people out there. I mean, I know they've been in the city for years, but get some bids where it'll be completed by such a date. I mean, it's just crazy. Another thing they didn't have any orange cones around all their stuff. This should be in the contracts that when you're done with your equipment at night, and that's why I crashed my truck, it's because there was no orange cones on both sides of the truck. I live on 20 Watha where there's no street lights in front of my house. It is pitch dark, and that's how I crashed into my neighbor's thing. And it's ridiculous that a company that's been in business for 25 years doesn't realize to do that. And then the very last thing is I got my own grass seed. Here's basically their work for patching lawns. And basically, if you go across the street, you're going to see my neighbor's lawns. It's been sitting for 3 weeks. They put the dirt down. Weeds are starting to grow. Here's another one. The addresses are on the property. I can give you a whole pile of those. Just crap workmanship. So what I did, and then this is the last thing, and I'm out of here, is what I did. This is 10 days worth of growth done right. This is a 15 by 40 section of my lawn. You're going to see it on the upper part of the magic marker. I went and got 2 trucks of dirt and got an $85 bag of grass seed and did it right. But you're going to see a beautiful filled-in lawn there with $475 worth of flowers we planted. So we like things to look nice. And all these other people, they have all this dirt, all torn up, that's been sitting for 3 weeks. Why don't they go in there and litigate the situation right away? People want their yards back. Put the grass seed down. Maybe put a little one on the door. Hey, can you water it once in the morning, once at night, if you want it to grow and look nice? But and basically, when you're done looking at that, the engineer came up to me after when I was working on my thing. They did give me grass seed to refill my bag, which was nice. Madison Parks, which was expensive. The engineer said, "No, we're not going to warranty that." Give me a frickin' break. But please go with someone different than Hamburg, I guess is where I'm at. I mean, their dad was a good man. They live about 5 houses down from me. But the new one, no. And you go to their house, too. You'll see on 20 Watha, I don't have a street light. This is Hamburg Senior's house where one of the Hamburg kids moved in. They got a street light connected to the city of Monona's pole. I don't know if it's sucking off city of Monona's electricity or not. It's not for the city street. It's moved 8 feet in for if they did have holes in their lawns where people could trip because it doesn't have any cones or tape or anything. People would be able to see. And same with the other brother. He got one from a park at one time, but that's where he turns the light switch on, but a big city light. But that's all I had to say. I thank you for your time, and I feel better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Item E, there is no public hearing tonight. Item F, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. There is no unfinished business. Item 2A, which is starred for immediate approval, consideration of Resolution 17-8-2201, approving a 4-lot certified survey map for the Yahara Commons General Development Plan. This is put forth by the Plan Commission.
Take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second, okay.
In your packets is a certified survey map for the riverfront development, Yahara Commons. It's a 4-lot CSM, which includes 3 lots for development and a 4th lot for the park parcel. Just pointing out a few of the easements that are included on the CSM. There's new right-of-way platted that will extend Metropolitan Lane from its existing location down to Broadway, along with a new connector road from Metropolitan to Bridge Road. There are 2 easements for the MMSD sewer interceptor in its relocated position. There's one 10-foot easement parallel to Broadway on the Phase 1 parcel, and another approximately 10-foot easement on the Phase 2 parcel parallel to Metropolitan Lane. There are public access easements for sidewalk areas near the park parcel and along the river, as well as along the Bridge Road side of Parcel 2. The Plan Commission and Public Works Committee have both recommended approval of the CSM as required by the code, and the Plan Commission approved it with 5 conditions of approval, which are listed in the resolution.
Are there any questions or comments? Alderwood?
In the map, the CSM map we got in our packet, towards the bottom of it, there's 2 arrows pointing from a rectangular box that says Rod 10 question mark. What does that mean?
I think
assume
those-
that's not going to be recorded that way.
No, it's not. Those are the engineer's notes.
Okay.
I don't know what it refers to, but it won't be included in the final CSM.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next item under new business is item B, consideration of resolution 17-8-2202, approval of bid for 2017 Bridge Road Park improvements put forth by the Parks and Recreation Director. And earlier tonight, we tabled this at Finance and Personnel until our next meeting. Jake, if you'd like to.
Sure, thank you. The Bridge Road Park Improvement Project has been an ongoing project that has generated a significant amount of public input and interest in improving not only the playground but the accessible path through the park. So through the design process and park board input, we came up with a site plan and put out bids for the site work, so kind of getting the playground ready to go, paths, bubbler, and then playground elements. So the resolution before you tonight is the first reading of the site work contract. At the next council meeting, we'll have a recommendation from Park Board on both the site work contract, the playground quotes that came in last Thursday, and then a recommendation for whether to request a capital budget amendment to pay for the overage. So right now the entire project is over what our original budget was, generally due to a little bit bigger design than what we originally had came up with last year. So the elements that are included in the park are an accessible path from Bridge Road that will wrap around the playground and connect to Midland Lane, which will be the new Public Works utility, water utility, asphalt parking area. There will be a bike rack, bike repair station, porta potty enclosure, a bubbler, and then playground elements, a sandbox. Playground elements include what we would call a mega play deck structure, so kind of the largest single standalone structure that we would have with a large slide coming off of it, zip line, a couple small spring riders, supernova element that's really a fun one for a different age group, and then this would be the first park that would have a concrete ping pong table as well. So there are some elements that were picked out from the public and the Parks Board that would cross a greater age category. And so it is unique in the fact that I think the public and the Parks Board, and myself for that matter, this park serves a large chunk of our residents in the southern part of Monona, and the existing equipment was probably not that great when it was installed and doesn't have a lot of fun factor today. So there is I would say a fairly significant overage in the overall cost for the project. We do believe that it's still a good design project, and it will have a large benefit to a large amount of people. The overage that I'm recommending is to take from a 2017 Ahuska Park tennis court project that's not going to be done this year. We had $65,000 allocated to do surface filling of cracks and painting of the tennis courts. After further examination by some of our tennis court consultants, 5 of the 8 courts are in a deteriorating shape that they need a complete renovation. So that cost is roughly going to be $150,000. So we shelved that project for this year, and we'll be recommending that renovation project at the courts for next year.
And that was item C that you just covered.
Correct.
Correct. Any questions? You'll have more answers after Park Board tomorrow?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item D, presentation of 2012 City Space Utilization and Facilities Study by Bray Architects. Mr. Wolfert is here. Thank you. Something we've all been waiting for.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. Anybody want a paper copy? I'm still back in the days of paper, in case anybody wants one. All right. What we wanted to do this evening is I wouldn't say bring to closure, but present a study that was started in 2011 and completed in 2012. Were any of you involved in that process? I don't recall. I don't see one familiar face. Obviously, Chief was involved. Jake was involved.
Some of them were.
So those of you that were involved, please help me if my memory fails me. It has been 5 years since we discussed this, so some of the specifics are a little vague, but the written document, hopefully, you have the summary report was presented to you. That summary is really the summary of this larger study document. So if people don't have this or would like access to this, please let April know. I'd be happy to make additional copies and get those sent to you. That's really the full backup to the brief presentation that I was going to run through this evening. So looking back to 2011, the city hired our organization to do I'll say a semi-detailed study looking at existing conditions, existing program needs across the city's departments, including administration, police, fire, parks and rec, and the senior component. So I'll kind of call it the campus across the street. Really, those were the programs and the buildings that we were asked to look at. There were 3 phases to that. The first piece was the needs assessment phase. The second was the building analysis, and the third was analysis of options. So the first 2 phases really focused on understanding what we have today, what we need moving into the future, and then evaluating our existing facilities. And that process it took months. We had numerous meetings with each department head, with their staff. We reviewed, like I said, the current need along with potential need. And those efforts were really summarized on the first 3, 4, or 5 or 6 slides, actually, of the report and presentation. In the end, what we found is that the city administration had some need, but in general, admin was in good condition at the time. Now, again, these are 5-year-old. This is a 5-year-old analysis, so things may have changed. The way you staff may have changed. That would be a component that would need to be addressed if we would move forward into the future with potential solutions. The fire department and the police department were probably the 2 most glaring areas of need. And if you've gotten a chance to tour those facilities, it's probably not a huge surprise. They're simply just dated facilities. They haven't been addressed for a lengthy period of time. Some systems have been maintained as best they could and have some improvements made. But from a space perspective, with policing and fire and EMS services changing, how those functions are staffed, the demands placed upon them, the space constraints really were pretty significant in both of those departments. And the differential between current square footage and future need, the majority of that, not all, but the majority of that is in kind of a garage component, especially on the fire side. Apparatus is larger, aerial trucks, things like that. They obviously take up a lot more room. Same thing on the police side. You have a lot of expensive equipment that you've invested in and continue to invest in on an annual basis that doesn't have room or sufficient space to be housed within the current facilities. So that's really the main drivers of need between the existing program and the proposed. There's a lot of areas that made it up. The single slide summary really doesn't do it justice. In the full report, there's a detailed room-by-room allocation of at that time, what each of the departments felt were needed for the future. So if you don't have that, again, that would be an important piece if you're interested in studying that a little more closely, exactly how the future needs were arrived at. The other part was Parks and Rec has a pretty significant need, and quite frankly, the majority of that really correlated to the master plan or the potential need for a gymnasium space in the future. And otherwise, the square footages were not that significant. That was the largest driver that took us from a current square footage of about 4,800 to a potential square footage of just under 22,000. So there were kind of a major component on each of those three facilities that drove the largest increase. But there's a lot of different components and a lot of things that have changed over the years that have led to need across all departments, with fire, police, and park and rec being the three largest drivers of square footage need across the city. Phase 2 looked at current buildings. So we looked at ADA, we looked at Americans with Disabilities Act, and tried to determine how the facility supported access for all of our community members, those with physical limitations and other challenges. We looked at the plumbing, HVAC, and electrical components. It's a big deal. Obviously, understanding that infrastructure, its condition, its age, not only from the perspective of what may need to be replaced in the near term, but looking long term if a project were to be proposed. Do we have sufficient boiler capacity or electrical service capacity, for example? Those are key components as when we arrive at budgets to establish. So that was a component of Phase 2, and again, that's detailed in great length within the study document. Those full reports are available for your review. Quite frankly, they're probably out of date at this point. 5 years is a pretty lengthy amount of time to go by. Some equipment has a 20-year projected lifespan from ASHRAE, American Society for Heating and Refrigeration Engineers. So theoretically, we've kind of already lived a quarter of the lifespan of some of those pieces of equipment. So if we would, as a group, get serious about considering some solutions a little more, I think it would be wise to consider having that team take another quick look and make sure that that equipment either hasn't been replaced or is in the similar condition that it was previously. The majority of the study, and probably what took the longest period of time, was the analysis of options. And so this was an effort that really was conducted by the ad hoc committee, explored 5 different scenarios, ranging from building simply a new fire station to a new city hall fire police building. At that time, the site that was considered was, and somebody's going to have to remind me whether it was Dean or UW Health. Which one was it? It was UW Health up on Monona. I believe there's a nice apartment building there now. So that was the site under consideration at the time, having great access for fire right onto Monona to get anywhere in the municipality quite efficiently, limiting their need to go through residential neighborhoods other than when the response required them to get into those neighborhoods. So that was a site at the time that was identified. It's very common that these sites are explored in a hypothetical manner. There was no ownership, there was no pursuit of ownership, so it was really done to suggest and say, would this potential project fit on that property? Would it make sense to explore? And at that time, the elected officials didn't have the desire to proceed, again, which is very common. It's a normal occurrence to evaluate needs, explore solutions, and until a council's in a position or a community's ready financially to make an investment. The land piece tends to be kind of the last component of the project. So those 5 options, as you can see, ranged from some of them I'll call idled or walked away from the existing city hall, police, fire building. Others considered that facility as a potential renovation option, where fire would simply move off-site, PD would remain and expand down into the current fire space. Other scenarios had Park and Rec taking over the entire existing community senior center remodeling and taking over the lower level with PD and fire leaving. So I think, and hopefully what you've seen is a relatively exhaustive list of scenarios related to options. The reality is there's probably an option 6, 7, or 8 that some of you may have or want to see explored, which again is very normal. We need to make sure that we explore all scenarios so you can feel confident and comfortable if you elect to move forward. The option that was recommended in the end after all of those efforts was to look at a phased implementation of option 5. And so option 5 had, in the long run, a new PD and fire building being constructed on, at that time, the Monona Drive site. At this point, it would be a to-be-determined site. So what we would call a public safety building to house police and fire somewhere within the city. And then Park and Rec, Senior Center, and Administration would all be housed with an addition renovation project at the current community center. So I think in the end, and this is more from memory than anything documented, was I think the group just felt that the vintage, the age, the size, the limiting factors with the lower level of the existing city hall in terms of access to natural light and a significant number of other challenges that come with that facility. The thought was to potentially move away from that. Again, that was 5 years old. It was an ad hoc facilities committee. It was an option. I think the main driver, though, was looking at and trying to prioritize finding some solutions for police and fire. And unless something significant has happened over those 5 years, I would guess if we went through the process, that would remain the priority. It's normal that public safety and those two components would be the ones that would rise to the top in terms of the areas that you would consider making an investment. The dollars that were included in this, again, are aged at this point, so we would really need to relook at those at whichever point the council would be interested in revisiting this. We've experienced anywhere from 3 to 5% inflation within the construction industry over this period of time on an annual basis. Maybe the first 2 years it was a little thinner than that because we were just starting to come out of some really challenging times, so maybe those years were a little lighter. My sense is we may see a little more difficult, we may see a little higher, 5+% in the next year or so ahead. That's just sense from the industry, no way to prove that at this point. But if you're curious to play the math game, I would think a 3 to 5% inflationary factor applied to those numbers would be appropriate. So the goal for tonight was really just to kind of bring this conversation back to the table. That was a very brief presentation of a almost year-plus long study, and open to any questions, thoughts you would have. And again, if at what point the council's ready to proceed, maybe a likely next step would be to revisit these programming efforts. So a relatively quick program verification effort where we would revisit with each department head, verify that the assumptions and the needs from 5 years ago remain consistent. And then usually, if as a council you're interested in still exploring relocating a component or two off-site from the campus, that site analysis, site selection piece would probably be a logical next step, just from the perspective of having a long-range vision, identifying where that facility could go. And even if you're not in a position to fund the construction of a facility at this point, at least get that site acquisition piece taken care of in the somewhat near future, so that when the time does come for you to proceed with making an investment on facilities, you've at least identified the site and have acquired that piece of property. So with that, open to any questions or thoughts you have.
Could you just clarify, you said 3 to 5%, that's annual inflation?
It is annualized, correct.
So we're talking 20 to 25%
Yeah.
total?
I'd rather say 3 to
Sounds a
5,
little worse, yeah.
but yes, you're right. It's not insignificant, and it would vary specifically. So we would really need to revisit the site component of this. At this time when we did these budgets, we had the site, so it was the UW site that we were looking at, so we were able to make assumptions on length of utilities, and there was not a great deal of grading necessary on that property, and it supported structures previously, so we didn't assume a great deal of below grade or deep foundations or anything like that. So if we would land on a site that has more topography, longer utility extensions, we may need to revisit that piece a little bit. But you are correct, it's 3 to 5% annualized, unfortunately.
And was there any recommendation for what to do with the existing city hall if we were to go with option 5?
You know, I think the presentation, my memory serves me right, it was a little bit intentional. It was at that time just idled. There was no specific solution. The cell phone tower, the radio communications piece, those were all components that were considered as to why we potentially couldn't eliminate that building altogether. You'll see if you go through the full document, I don't know if there's a great deal of difference between some of the solutions that would keep the building online with a little bit of an investment. And part of the thought might be, too, that if the desire from councils to phase into this and move a piece at a time, that building is going to be part of your inventory for the foreseeable future. Now, for example, if you elect to only move fire first, and I'm not advocating for that, but that could be a scenario that you would consider. If you just move fire first or you just move police first, I probably should have said police first with these guys in the room tonight, but if you just moved one of those two first, conceptually you would have to keep that building obviously online up and until which point you could hopefully move the other. But if nothing has changed, I think in this specific case, and we do this all over the state, PD and fire were really on board with a public safety model. The thought of being in a facility shared the camaraderie that's built, the ability to train together, to share spaces. Sometimes we see kind of a combative us versus them between PD and fire. Wasn't at all the case here. And I think the benefits of considering in the long run them housed together with some shared functions would pay dividends.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do recall reviewing the full report, but if you could remind me, as part of the analysis, was there analysis done, and the needs assessment piece in particular, of what it's costing the inaction, if you will, is costing the city currently?
Yeah, and it's always hard to say. Conceptually, the 3 to 5% annual inflation.
Sure.
So it's more the delay and the longer we wait. And you have to agree that there's a need first. If you don't believe there's a need, then I think the argument is waiting is fine because you don't believe anything needs to be done. But if you agree there's a need and believe there is a need, I think a fair assumption is that every year you wait is 3 to 5%.
Right, but isn't there also costs involved in higher maintenance because of antiquated systems, and also customizing of trucks or equipment to be able to fit into the bays that we have? That
Yeah,
would also be more expensive?
That's a great point. Yeah, and so from the perspective of the facility side and operations and maintenance, we would really have to look at kind of any maintenance costs that have been incurred over the last 5 years. I mean, the benefit now is we can quantify that with real numbers versus projections. The reports would suggest, and this is always the struggle, is we have to use a benchmark. So as I said earlier, ASHRAE is the kind of general association for heating and cooling equipment. They would put a projected life expectancy on pieces of equipment like boilers or air handlers or VAV boxes, for example. That's all we can really go on as a benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
Quite frankly, most public sector clients are able to make those pieces of equipment last much longer. So the suggestion would be if your car has 150,000 miles on it, that used to be a big deal. These days, it's probably not as big of a deal. You can get a few more miles out of it. I would say the benefit of having a master plan, though, is essential from an operational perspective, because if I'm attempting as an administrator or as an elected official to decide what to do with an aging building, if our vision is let's just get by and we'll phase in a replacement plan, I think anything that would happen, we would Band-Aid a solution. We wouldn't put a more long-term solution in. If the solution is to keep people in that facility for the foreseeable future, I think the wise decision, obviously, is to make potentially a bigger investment in a longer-term solution. And so that's part of the benefit of having, even if you don't act on a master plan, having a master plan that from an operational perspective you can react with accordingly. I think that is always beneficial, and I think it allows you to make better decisions for your constituents with how you invest their dollars. The bigger picture, though, related to how much have we spent on customized trucks, I'd really have to turn to the departments and say what kind of additional costs have you incurred for some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
No, nothing for babies. Did one time for babies 10 years ago. Otherwise, we haven't done anything for babies. Related to the size of the trucks and stuff like that.
Okay. The other part of it it's impossible to really quantify is the employee retention, employee recruitment side. And I know the intern component is a big deal with fire, and how do we get interns and keep them and create them. That's from a labor perspective, that's great labor to have, and it's great training, and it really is a great way to fill your pool of future fire and EMS team members. So that not only recruitment but retention side is another thing to keep in mind as we consider solutions in the long run.
Any other questions? Everyone's solved. Comments? April?
Just to talk a little bit, I think you summed up very well, why are some other reasons that we would want to continue with this study, which is not necessarily let's build a new building tomorrow, but if we identify where you have to keep a building where it is for the next 10, 20 years, how are we going to manage that building? And I know we're starting to get even just estimates for some HVAC system replacements, and it's just unbelievable what some of these costs are. So I think that's an important component. The fact that we have so little land here in the city is another very important component. We can't wait 20 years and decide we want to do this. There might be something like a Fairway Glen sitting on that parcel that takes away our choice. But I would say that the next component is that we will have presentations from our city's auditor, our bond advisor, and our TIF advisors. And I think the timing works out very well because we have some newer council members, and with this riverfront project that we have coming up, that's a major project. So I think to kind of reevaluate now that we have a better handle on what's going to happen with the riverfront, kind of where we are, where we're going in the financial sense, I think is a key piece of the puzzle for everyone to have a good handle on. And we did do a tour of the city facilities with the council members, and I think it's one thing to see it on paper, but when you're in the fire department and you're having to kind of shimmy through to get around in between trucks, I think it gives you a better perspective of, we're saying space is lacking or systems aren't functioning. If you can see it and feel it, hear it sometimes, I think it gives you a really good idea of what we're talking about. So these are some of the pieces of this puzzle that we're putting together as we're deciding what will we do for the next steps. So just to give you kind of an idea of, where we think we're going to go next with this. And here we are at budget time, so this is the time to start making those decisions. So.
Yeah, and there's never a right time to make an investment of this type. It's significant, and it's a difficult decision to make. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing an increase in public sector spending on facility side, whether it's schools, municipal governmental side, it's kind of the culmination of a pent-up demand from a lack of work being completed during the recession. So about this time frame when the study was completed, I think the fear that construction costs, not only are we seeing them increase, but that they'll continue to increase, if not expand and get worse from the perspective of a diminishing labor force and a lack of quality labor and all the things that are going to contribute to that. But we're also still in a record low interest rate environment, which I think is the other component that many municipalities are considering is, how much longer is that going to be the case? And again, it's not that you want to do it, but if you agree that it's something that has to be done, I think that's why a lot of our clients are considering now as potentially a time to make that initial investment.
I just had a quick comment of thanks. Thanks for you for coming back and presenting this 5 years later. A little bit of deja vu. Thanks to the mayor for bringing this up. Being one of those new members, this is something that I heard about when I first joined the Public Safety Committee committee, and I never understood why we didn't at least have the conversation. Because as I'll repeat it. We don't necessarily, we're not saying we're going to buy a building and build a building today, but, having this master plan, if you will, allows us to plan, whether it's in parks of what we do with the community center or with the fire department, et cetera. So, I'm excited by this. I like the conversation. I'm all about having conversations and seeing where it goes. So I look forward to, the next steps and look forward to hopefully seeing you more and
Sounds great.
seeing where this goes.
Yeah, that is my hope, that we'll at least come up with a master plan, and if that leads to, if there is a piece of property that would work well, and we end up being able to purchase that, at least for now, or an option on it or something, then at least we've got that piece done, because I mean, this is going to take 15 years probably, it's the way these things go, but if we at least have some idea of what we're planning on. Now, I think you gave us an estimate of about $4,000 to do an update.
Yeah, that would be a quick update on the program side, meet with each department head over half a day or two a day, and then consider a couple sites if there are a few more that you'd want us to do those quick, what we would call kind of a test fit diagram, just what would a certain component, whether it's PD, whether it's fire, whether it's both, how does that work on a site, does the circulation work? So just a quick analysis of a couple sites, and then the main piece is that program verification side, make sure that the assumptions that were made 5 years ago in working with the department heads hold true today.
Right, which I think that would be key. I don't think we can go with what we have as it exists now. I know a couple of the staff wanted to make comments, or I don't know if you have questions, but please come up, and Chief Ostringa.
Yeah, probably in the next couple of weeks. I know the mayor is planning on meeting with some of the other alders about traffic safety issues, and this falls into the same category. The fire department building, the police department building, being where we are, causes issues with traffic safety. We can't do the things we want to do on Winnequa Road specifically to slow down traffic because we have to keep it smooth for the fire trucks. Things like speed tables and things like that. So it's much more complicated than just, oh, we want a new police station, new fire station. I know if the fire chief were here, he'd be, rattling off a list of issues. We have another issue with the courts. We're not supposed to be, the police department and the courts are supposed to be totally separate. The court clerk's office is inside the police department. She operates out of the police department. People come to pay their fines. Sometimes they're paying those fines to a sworn police officer. We shouldn't be doing that. We should not. That should be totally separate, but we don't have any place to go. We used to have a small interview room, so when there was a confidential conversation going on, we could take people out of the lobby if the conference room was tied up and go into the small interview room. That's now our radio station. It's a great radio station, but we just don't have room. We don't have room for training. Today, we had a staff meeting at 10 o'clock. DCI came in with a major investigation with about 20 agents. We had to pile them all into the briefing room so that they could do their briefing and go out and do the mission they were on. So I could go on and talk about evidence storage. You all had the tour, but I really hope, when I first was going to come up here, I think I should start singing Alleluia, because I didn't think this would ever happen. It's been shut down for so long. And I just want to thank our administrator and our mayor for bringing this forward. So hopefully we'll get a plan in place. It's probably not going to be in my time here, but for the future, you have to start thinking about this. It's very important. Thanks.
Thank you, Wally. Does anyone else have anything to add? The rest of the council? All right. I mean,
Well, I was just
Moore?
going to say that I would, I know I might have less patience than some other people here, and I'm new to this body, but I sure as heck hope it doesn't take 15 years. I mean, this is obviously, I understand it's a big project, but it's obviously way overdue. And I think one of the beauties of a community like Monona is we're small enough, we should be nimble enough to be able to figure out how to move it along at a much faster pace. And I just think it needs to be a priority.
I haven't heard from everybody here. I mean, can I assume that most people feel that this is something we should be at least taking a look at? Here, is there anybody on the council? We're not voting or anything, but is there anybody who thinks we should just put this aside for now? And
Absolutely not. I don't think this is the right time to move forward. I think it's irresponsible not to have a plan because we're putting Band-Aids on facilities that, Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids, and spending money that we shouldn't be spending unless we know that 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we're going to be able to move to something else.
which is a key thing. As April mentioned, some of these HVAC issues, we need to decide if we should invest in some of this or not, and, if that makes any sense, looking at the long term. Does anyone else have anything? Alder Wood?
Oh, wait.
You had the first.
I think it's overdue for us to look at this, and we did the study 5 years ago, and then it sort of got shelved, and we did have other priorities that we were working on, but it's definitely time to dig into it and develop a plan initially, and then I guess can't really go too far beyond that at this point. But we were all on the tour. We saw what some of the facilities look like, and they need major upgrades or complete replacement. So.
Alder Holmquist?
I'm definitely in support of the next steps that has been laid out. This has been part of the conversation in, I think, every committee that I've been a part of for the last 4 or 5 years, and some of our committees have kept it on our agenda for that long, with the idea of not wanting to lose sight, with the recognition that our previous mayor was not ready to take that next step with it, and I'm excited that this is an item that our current mayor, and I thank you, wants to not only bring up, but be pretty active in moving forward. We're not too far into you taking reins, mayor, and bringing this issue up, and with a plan to actually do something about it rather than just the conversation. So I thank you, and I look forward to next steps quicker than later, as Nancy pointed out. 15 years is way too long. So.
Good. I'm really happy to hear that everyone is supportive. I think, as April was speaking earlier, we are planning on having some different financial presentations over the next couple of months, and hopefully then Mark can give us a good idea of just when it makes sense budget-wise for us to be thinking about this. I know the next year or two things are going to be pretty tight, but then hopefully this will fit into the plans. But, we've put all this time and effort and TIF money and everything into redevelopment, which has been great, but at some point we have to look at these city facilities. We just can't let things keep going downhill like they are. So, anything else? Well, I guess we'll be pursuing this and listening to the reports, and then I hope to appoint an ad hoc committee at some point in the next few months to dig into this a little deeper. And I would imagine that we're going to be talking about having you folks come back and do an update on that study too.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
This evening.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. I guess we're on to item H, reports of committees, commissions, mayor, city administrator, whoever. So I guess Alder Moore, do you have anything to report?
No, I just would, I have met with all of the staff members except one at this point, and I just would like to extend my thanks again to the city staff for that time and education. And I think Monona is very fortunate to have the crew of people that we do.
Alder Kitzler?
I'll just make a quick pitch for the library's Famlash. I'll let everybody look it up if they have not seen signs, but that's my one pitch.
Alder Wood?
No report.
Alder Holmquist?
No report.
Alder Coor?
No report. I just would like to echo Nancy's thanks to staff for those that I've met with and those that I plan to meet with. Thanks for your time.
April?
Oh, I have a bunch because I didn't say anything last time.
All
So, National Night Out. If anyone hasn't gotten back to me about possibly being at the table or in the dunk tank, you know who you are. Please get back to me. And I have now access to the OneDrive, which we share on this computer. So I've uploaded the final code book draft, some photos. So I'll try to keep you better informed by using the OneDrive. And if you have any questions or can't get anything that I post, let me know.
What is the status of the code book? Is that going to be coming?
That should be like within the next couple weeks, the draft. They said 2 to 3 weeks last week. So it should be coming very soon, and then it will start coming on the agenda. A final package of university reports are online, and we will have our public presentation August 16th at 7 p.m. Right here in this room. Jason Vargo from the UW will be hosting the presentation, but our 4 staff leads will also be present, and everyone is welcome. It's not officially a city council meeting, but please invite your committees and all of your members to attend. We'd love to have good attendance at that meeting. One quick item, Walmart has filed a complaint with the circuit court, as we have expected. In brief, they claim their parcel should be assessed at no more than $9.5 million, and that they may be due a partial refund of their excessive property taxes for 2017. We have them assessed at $28.5 million. So I know this body has talked about the dark store, and we thought this might be coming. So it is officially here in the circuit court. Not to steal Sonia's thunder here, but we finally have the riverfront development agreements with Galway's companies officially signed. So all those documents are signed and put to bed. So contracts are being let. Demolition is out to bid, with bid opening to be on the 10th. Demolition starts, we hope, on October 2017. And we have all final site plan approvals. So that is going gangbusters. So. Oh, and then we got the $250,000 WEDC grant coming unofficially.
After Wednesday, we'll know for sure.
unofficially, but it's, look, what, 99%, what did we say? 90%? No one's watching from WEDC, I don't think. So
0%.
it's looking incredibly positive that we will also get that grant. So that's some very good news, thanks to Sonia's wonderful application. And I believe that is all that I have.
Okay. Well, again, I would just like to encourage any residents to come to that University wrap-up on the 16th, because we're really hoping the people can come and see what we've spent the last year and a half working on, and there's been a lot of great projects that have come forth that we'll be talking about in years to come. Also, I don't know if just remind people or let people know if they haven't had a chance to see last week's or the weeks before issue of Isthmus. We had some terrific stories on Monona that about half the issue focused on Monona. So if you hadn't had a chance to see it, go find one. I don't. Does the library have that, or do you know? Yeah. So. Okay.
And I can post those links to you. We've got the mayor and I were on the news last week, and we had Sonia was interviewed on Saturday for the paper, and obviously articles in the Herald Independent. So there's a lot of good press out there for your reading enjoyment.
Right.
So.
All right. I guess we have one item left, which is appointments. Mr. Anderson?
Ask the staff if they'd like to say anything.
No.
So one quick thing is an invitation to this whole body. Tomorrow night is our Park and Recreation Board meeting. Alder Kitzler has promised that it will be 90 minutes or less. After adjournment, there is a planning tour, informal, we'll call it planning session at Old Brick Beer Garden. So among my many journeys, I like to see how other parks are functioning, and Old Brick Park has seen a huge spike in, I think, attendance, and if you've driven by there. So we're going to check out the beer garden as a possibility of potentially someday having somewhere in Monona.
Research.
Now it's
Research,
starting,
yep.
yeah.
7:30-ish, we'll say, right, Alder Kitzler?
I've heard good
30
things
on the
about it.
dot.
Yeah.
You can be there.
So does your meeting start at 6:30?
Starts at 6.
At 6, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't. Does anybody else have any thing they'd like to announce? All right. One item left is the reappointment of Todd Stebbins to the Library Board, effective immediately through June 30th of 2019. Is there a motion?
I have a question. So earlier this year, we talked about appointments and process. Have we had further discussion about the procedures that we're anticipating for that? And I know we were caught in a time that we needed to fill some spots, and I know there have been many other moving pieces, but it just reminded me when I saw
Right,
this.
and I have thought about that a little bit. This Todd's reappointment kind of slipped through the cracks in April, so I don't think we're going to be changing any process right now. Next spring, I hope to at least do something about checking with people who are up for reappointment to see if they're still interested, and if we do have some other people who've applied, maybe letting them know if they shouldn't feel bad that other people are eager to step up if they'd rather give up their seats. So we just need to think more about the actual process, I think. So good question, though.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Stebbins is reappointed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.